In this video, I'll demonstrate virtualizing a CICS distributed transaction processing connection using a CA DevTest. So we're going to use a DevTest workstation to record and then virtualize the DTP connection. In this example, we'll be using a DTP connection that's LU6.2, although we also support LU6.1 and MRO. So before we get started, let's take a quick look at what one of these connections might look like. And for that, we'll take a look at one that I captured in Application Insight. This isn't an Application Insight demo, so we won't go into it too much, but we'll just take a look at the path that was captured when I ran this CICS transaction. The CICS transaction I'm interested in is called L62A, and this is what it was recorded in Application Insight when I ran that transaction. I run the transaction, it starts this program demo62AP, does a CICS link to demo L62A, and then demo L62A does a CICS link to demo getN, and then it starts its DTP connection. It does an allocate, connect process, send, wait, receive, extract, and free. That's the DTP connection. And we want to virtualize that because our peer, the host that has our peer, is not available, creates a constraint, our testing fails, and we just want to virtualize that DTP connection out. Now in DevTest, we virtualize DTP connections on the client side only. And what I mean by client is the peer in the LU6.2 conversation that starts the connection, that starts the conversation. And here the conversation started with this allocate and connect process. I can't virtualize the server side because once a DTP connection comes in to a CICS region, it expects a valid conversation. So once the connection's been made, I can't virtualize it away. But I can from the client side because I'm going to virtualize all of these CICS commands. All of the CICS commands used for DTP conversations, whether it's MRO, LU6.1, or LU6.2, they're all supported in DevTest. So the transaction we're going to run is L62A. The program with the connection is demo L62A, and it runs on CICS TS53. That's the CICS Apple ID of the region that it runs on. So let's get started. We'll create a VSE recording. And I'm just going to give it the name of the program, demo L62A, for the VSI and the VSM. I'll choose CICS link or DTP. And since we're doing DTP, that's correct. And click Next. Now I can select the program from a list. For example, I can expand this and see the different CICS regions that have agents installed, and it'll show me a list of the different PPT entries based on this prefix. Or I can just add it manually, and I'm just going to do it manually because I know the program, I know everything I need. The program is demo L62A. The region is CICS TS53. And what I want to virtualize is a DTP connection. I can give it the specific connection name. These are all the connections that are defined on the CICS region. But I don't need to restrict it because there's only one connection, so I'll just blank it out. The connection type is replace. I can choose replace or pass through. Replace says eliminate all of the DTP commands. Pass-through says allow the connection to be established and torn down correctly, however, virtualize the sends and receives. We're just going to use replace to get rid of the entire connection, and I don't need to worry about a specific transaction ID. So now I've added the program that contains the DTP connection. on this CICS region, and I'm recording. Over on my CICS region, I run my transaction, my 3270 terminal, L62A. So I press enter to get the first record. I can press PF12 to browse through the records. That should be enough. And I can see it's recorded 3 DTP connections from the allocate all the way down to the free. And then allocate down to the free. Each one of the DTP connections has the same commands. Now I need to specify the copybook data protocol. It defaults to specifying the copybook data protocol for both the request and the response, and I want to keep that, so I'll leave it as it is. But to do copybook mapping onto the payload, I need to have a couple of resources set up. And those resources that I need are the copybook itself. This is the text file that has the copybook. This is what's passed in the request on a send and the response on a receive. He uses the same copybook for both the send and receive. And the other resource I need is a mapping file. Here's a sample mapping file for doing DTP virtualization. This tells DevTest that when I'm looking at the payload, I'm going to match on the payload. The key I'm looking for is demo get B. That's the name of the program that's being invoked on the server side. That's just the way my server works, is you pass it the name of the program. And the name of the program happens to be from columns 5 to 13. And if you see that, then use this text file for the copy. And I have the same thing for the response. They happen to be identical in this case. And I knew this just by looking at the copybook. I know they have the program name here. It's 8-character program name starting in position 5. So now I need to specify where this copybook information is at. I know that my copybook is in this data copybooks folder, and the mapping file is here. I want to translate it from EBCDIC to ASCII when I'm editing it. And I'm done. Let's take a quick look at the service image. So here I've recorded, it looks like one conversation. All of the CICS commands to do the DTP connection are here. But you notice that some of them have multiple little dots here. DevTest noticed that the allocate on all 3 of my connections that I recorded, and I went through those 3 records, the allocate's always the same, the connect process is the same, everything's the same except for the send and receive. So if I look at the send, I've got 3 requests here in the send, and if I look at the receive, I've also got 3. And the receive is what I'm mostly concerned about here, because that's the actual response from the LU6.2 server that I'm talking to. And I've got 4 responses here. The first one is called the meta response, and this is the response that's going to be used if I don't get a match with these specific responses. So for the meta response, I can see the data, and the first thing I notice is that a couple of the fields look a little strange. These fields were selected by DevTest to be magic strings. It recognizes that this account number is an identifier. It identifies the record that was read. And also this program name is also unique. It identifies what program was invoked. So I can change this meta response to be something recognizable, 1999. And the other responses I'll just leave alone, because they were actually recorded. So if I get a response that comes in with the account number of 1, I will get this data. If I get a request that comes in with the account number of 2, I'll get this data, and so on, for each of these specific recorded transactions. Okay, so that's enough with the virtual service image. I'll save it. And now let's deploy, well, let's wait to deploy it. Let's make sure we actually need it. Let's go back out here to my CICS region, and just to make sure that I'm actually simulating a real scenario, I'm gonna turn off the connection to my remote CICS region. So now I've shut off my connection to the remote CICS region, and this could be, doesn't have to be a remote CICS region, it could be a program running an IMS, any APPC or LU6.2 compatible session partner. It could be any of those. So now if I run my transaction, it fails, because my CICS LU6.2 allocate failed with these response codes, because my connection is now down. So to get around this situation, I can deploy my virtual service. So I deploy the virtual service. I can look back in the portal. And I can see that it's running. It's deployed on VSC on my workstation, and it's also deployed out to the CICS region. So the exit on the CICS region will virtualize those commands for that transaction. So now let's try this again. Just start over. And it runs fine. I get the recorded data. This is the data that was received when I recorded the DTP session. I can browse through the records and get the data that I recorded. Once I get to a record that I didn't record, with an account number that I didn't record, I'll start getting the meta response. I typed in that 1999 for the meta response. And for each record that I didn't have a specific response, I'll get the meta response. So I've successfully eliminated the constraint of this DTP connection being unavailable at some time. I can go back into my portal, and I can stop the virtual service. It stops it on my workstation, and it also tells the CICS agent to stop the virtual service. Now when I go back out to CICS, PF12, it fails again, because the virtual service is no longer there. And that's as simple as it is to virtualize a DTP connection with DevTest. Thank you.